A very good morning to you all. Welcome along to my repeat of my session, Defense Against the Dark Arts. We're going to talk about Azure Security. How is everybody today? Everybody good? Yeah? Okay. Did anybody go to this last night? Their Star Wars party thing? That was awesome. I have definitely made my journey to the dark side, and it's complete, my friends. Okay, so welcome along, as I say, to this session. I really do appreciate you coming along. I know we ran this the other day, and a number of people unfortunately couldn't get in, and for that you have my sympathies, and I'm sorry, but hopefully this will make up for it, okay? So, who am I? My name is Andy Malone. I'm an MVP in Enterprise Security, Cloud and Data Center, and have been now for about 12 years. I'm also a Microsoft trainer of 21 years. You don't get that for murder these days, do you? I'm from Scotland, a little place called Stirling in Scotland as well. So what are we going to be talking about today? We are going to be talking about current cybersecurity trends, and what I thought we would do is I'm going to show you a number of features of Microsoft Azure, but I thought, you know, I can show you these features, but I want to have a story to tell you. So I'm going to tell you a story, and hopefully, I'm also, by the way, going to do a live hack as well. So do you fancy that? Would you like to see that, yeah? Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about, and this particular attack is so simple, a 10-year-old could do it. So I'm not talking about putting a satellite into geosynchronous orbit or anything like that. This is a really easy, frighteningly easy attack that somebody can do. And I'm going to show you how some of the features in Azure and also in Office 365 in the Security Center there kind of integrate, and how we can basically thwart this attack, so that no matter what you've got out there, you know that that attack will not work. So on top of that, I'm going to provide Andy's top tips. So what I've done is I've taken a look at Azure and Office 365. I thought, you know, what are some of the features that would help me as a potential user that you guys could enable in Office 365 and also in Azure as well. And that's the plan. Tomorrow, by the way, I have a session the same time tomorrow. It's going to be a fun session on covert channels in modern computing. So it's called Going Underground. Same time tomorrow, and that's in room 311. So hopefully you can make it for that. Now, when we talk about this session, I'm going to talk about the difference between on-prem and in the cloud. Now, one of the things that I have a great honor in doing is working with Microsoft. I've worked with Microsoft staff in their various data centers. I've also worked with them on the help desk as well. I do train the trainer with internal Microsoft staff, as well as many people like yourselves as well. So we're going to look at some of the security features, and I'm going to talk about some of the Office 365 security features and how these two sets of features can really come together to help you. So the question is, you're moving to the cloud. You think, okay, we're going to move to the cloud. A few years ago, I stood on a stage, not unlike this, and we were kind of, are we going to move to the cloud? And at that point, we all had the resistance. I'm never going to move to the cloud. I want to keep everything on premises. Unfortunately, those guys are now shoveling fries in McDonald's. So, you know, we are moving to the cloud one way or another. So, again, should you be concerned? Well, the thing is, with moving to the cloud, there's so much security, so much compliance that cloud security companies have to do. And I'm thinking about, for example, in Europe, in May 2018, we have a little thing called the GDPR that's coming in. Now, GDPR is the updated version of the European Security Data Directive. And the thing about that is you probably think, hey, you know, we're in the US. That's never going to matter with us. You'd be surprised, my friends. So if you do any business in Europe, you do any business with any of the European Union countries, if you've got any business interest there, this is important to you. So May 2018, and if you don't get it right, and there's a data leakage of one kind, it could cost you 4% of your global turnover, or 20 million euros. So we're talking, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So When we talk about cybercrime, what's the current state of cybercrime? What are the current motivators? And we look at this and we can see that in the big red, of course, it's financial. So the bad guys, you know, rather than robbing banks anymore, they'll go, hey, this is great. We can just go online and we can make a ton of money. Again, other players as well, so obviously hacktivism, so whether they're doing it for malicious use, cyber espionage, of course, espionage, big, huge business. So some countries in the world, I'm not going to mention some, but basically they do a pretty good version of the BMW, they do an excellent version of the Range Rover, and they do an excellent version of a Ferrari, all with different badges on, purely because of espionage, and I'm not mentioning any names. Okay. Of course, the other thing as well is cyber warfare. Cyber warfare is on the grow. We don't like that word, though, cyber warfare. Cyber warfare basically is, rather than putting boots on the ground, let's disrupt them. Let's disrupt their infrastructure in one way or another. And a perfect example of that, we experienced this in the UK earlier this year, actually. This is the NHS, our National Health Service. It's one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest employer in the UK. Affected millions of people, hundreds of health boards. It was a complete nightmare. Again, British Airways, we all know this particular airline. Again, their computer systems went down globally. So, you know, hundreds of thousands of passengers worldwide were left stranded because of this security problem. And of course, when we talk about the attack, we have to look at what kind of vectors, what causes these attacks. So of course, is it mobile? Are they coming in through mobile devices? And again, there are open source mobile devices like, for example, Android, of course, where you can write your own stuff. But the thing is, you can also download software. So we're talking things like bowling games. If you've got a 10-pin bowling game, and then you look at it when you install it, and you wonder, why on earth does this need access to my camera or my microphone? Something not right about that. Of course, cloud as well. Cloud is the new attack space. So we're looking to attack the cloud. And again, there is now a growth in tools. There's a growth in interest in potentially attacking the cloud. And this is why it's really important to get it right. Yeah? So that's that. So I'm always in the mindset of before you can defend, you need to learn how to attack. So if you're interested in security, you need to be aware of what the current security trends are, what the current security tools are. So again, this is really important. WannaCrypto 2, of course, this has been well documented, that horrible piece of ransomware that got so many people in a tizzy, of course, encrypts their hard drives. And the thing is, you know, the bad guys come out with software like this, and we constantly finding ourselves chasing our tails trying to defend against this stuff. And I'm sure you don't need me to tell you all about what this particular piece of software was. Now, where did this piece of software come from, I hear you say? Well, you know, I'm not one for speculating in any way or form. So, who knows? I'm not a political person. So, anyway, but the fact is that I can just log online. I can download simple tools like this. Hey, and in 2 minutes, I've got my own ransomware, and I can send out stuff, and I can be collecting money from you, baby. No problem, okay? So this is a free piece of software. Download it today, and watch them pay. Okay. So that's Tox. Okay, now, a little while ago, actually about a month ago, I was looking through the BBC News website, as we do in the UK, and I came across this story. And it says, shoddy data stripping exposes firms to hack attacks. And I thought, data stripping, really? Simple, that sounds really simple. So I thought, you know, I want to take a look at that. So what I did is I then started looking at what kind of data we actually store in the cloud. And I came across, of course, there are a number of different types of data in the cloud. So, of course, you've got data at rest. So if you've got virtual machines in Azure, if you've got apps in Azure, and if you've got data, for example, in other clouds, such as Amazon and Google and so on, then it's going to be at rest. So first things first, in Azure, of course, all your data is encrypted with BitLocker. We know that. It's all protected with BitLocker. Any kind of communication, of course, between yourself and the cloud goes through HTTPS or SSL, port 443. For example, email is protected through EAP TLS, encryption security as well. So data in transit is very important, and especially because this is a major attack vector. So this is now becoming a major attack vector. And how do we attack data in transit? We do man-in-the-middle attacks, okay? The other thing is we also, of course, data in use. So any potential data in use. So potential cookies. Of course, we have identity cookies. We store cookies on machines. And we can change, what we're finding is that we can change the token lifetime of a cookie. And we change the token lifetime to allow users the convenience of not having to re-log on every time they open their web browser. Again, convenience, though, against security, is something that we need to balance there. Data in production, of course, and of course there's always going to be data not in production, backups and so on. So when we look at this data in the cloud, there's some pretty obvious stuff here. So there's your documents, there's your files, there's your email, your contacts, OneNote, and all of this kind of stuff. This type of stuff is typically well protected, yes? I would say it's pretty well protected. But then you start looking closer. You start looking at web pages, cookies, tokens, instant messaging, chats, Skype logs, metadata. That's interesting. Metadata is interesting. And then even less obvious are things like surveys, wikis, blogs, announcements, and so on. And this is important because one of my passions in security is digital forensics. I love digital forensics, you know. I lie awake at night dreaming about it. No, I'm not that sad, really. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at one of these less obvious pieces of data. Okay, so we look at metadata. What is metadata? Well, of course, metadata has been around for many, many years. It was simple, you know, you put in a website description in the past, you put a few keywords in the past. But because, hey, hold on a minute, suddenly everything's connected to the internet now. So all our devices, whether you've got, Alexa, Google Home, whether you've got, Siri, whether you've got Windows devices, whether you've got Internet of Things, everything's generating metadata. Hell, you can't even get in a car nowadays and it's not creating metadata. Everywhere is metadata. I love this saying, every click you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Courtesy of the NSA. Thank you very much. Okay. So we have, it's impossible to avoid it. And when you look closer, there are actually different types of metadata as well. So of course there's descriptive metadata. There is structured metadata. So for example, if I went into my Active Directory on your domain, you would see the structure of your Active Directory database, the OUs and the directory design, for example. But there's also admin metadata as well. And you can help users find things and look for things as well. And this is, again, pretty interesting. So when we talk about metadata, the fact that it's everywhere, we can see that it really is everywhere. So from your fridge to your TV, to your smart TV, of course, to even toys, kids' toys, light bulbs, door locks on doors. I'll never get one of those, baby. I'm telling you. I don't care how good it is. I am never going to buy a smart lock for a door, okay? So there we go. Metadata, as I say, is everywhere. So in the cloud, when we start looking at the cloud, we also see that metadata is here as well. So again, we have tenant metadata, and this can include things like configuration information. It can include performance, all of this. It can include things like security, logs, and performance information, as I said. So, Andy, is there a tool that we could kind of exploit this? Well, yes, okay, there is. So what I'm going to do is just switch over here to my favorite. I'm just going to open a new window and open up Microsoft's favorite search window. Oops, okay, I will never work with Microsoft again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a very, very simple Google hack, okay? A very simple Google hack. So I'll type in here site : I'm going to say com for the com website, and I'm going to say file type, and I'm going to say XLS spreadsheets. And in there, I'm going to cite membership list, okay? Now, you could type, of course, anything in here. So you can see I'm basically typing in this. So I could put in, for example, site mill. I could look for PDFs, classified information, all kinds of information. But I would never do that, of course, because I certainly don't want to be rubber gloved on the way out tomorrow. Okay. So, you know what they say, you know, I never trust a woman at the airport if she's wearing rubber gloves, yeah? It's never going to end well for you. So, okay, so let's have a look here. So I'm looking through this, I've got some various things here. Is there anything of interesting? Now, okay, this looks like maybe an association. Let's have a look at this. Now, surely this company wouldn't be stupid enough to put personally identifiable information up onto the internet. Surely they're not. Oh, they are. Okay. Okay, so we've got names, we've got addresses, we've got emails, we've got phone numbers. You could have sensitive information here. Look, this is silly. Okay, this is silly. So how can I do a very simple attack like that? I could get usernames, credit card numbers, personally identifiable information. You can do an awful lot of damage with a simple Google attack. And then I think, well, okay, is there a way that I could make this more interesting? So I'm going to switch over to my Windows machine, and I've got a little, I've got a little tool here. And if you excuse the name of this tool, it's called Fokker. Okay? Yeah, right now there's a Microsoft guy at the back going, he's never going to work here again. Okay? Okay. So this this particular tool is interesting. Because I don't know if you were ever obviously you were kids. No, when you were kids, did you ever play with Lego when you were kids? Yes? We all play with Lego, right? Do you remember the green boards? And we used to build stuff on the green boards. Well, the problem is, think about technology the way we've moved on. Those green boards is our technology, okay? So if you're building, all we've done with security is we've built on top of the green board, yes? And the problem is, tools like this get under the board. That's the problem, all right? So let's see if we can get under the board here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my project. I'm going to create a simple project here. Let's just make this interesting. I was going to type in the words NSA here, but I thought I'd better not, okay? So I'm going to use a company. This is a live company, a real organization. Okay, this is a organization in Sterling where I live. So if anybody's from Sterling, I apologize for what you're about to see. And I'm going to create this, and I'm just going to save it. Yes. Okay, and so we've now created this this little project. And the first thing I need to do is I click onto Tools, and I need to find out some DNS information. So I need to do some DNS snooping. So this obtains the DNS servers for .gov.uk. So once I've got that, I can then go to my metadata here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to their servers. And you would think that this is just kind of, it's going to prompt me to log into their servers before I access any data. Well, as you'll see, unfortunately, not. It doesn't do it, okay? And this would just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going forever. Okay? It would just strip everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select just a selection of these documents, and I'm just going to download them, okay? So there's nothing stopping me. It's not prompting me for logins. It's not asking me to do anything. There's no security on this. This is insane, okay? So I'm just going to go by on this. Now, while that's loading, please let me introduce you to Focker's little brother. This is called Evil Fokker, okay? And this particular, as you can see, we can actually perform a man-in-the-middle, an IPv6 attack. We can do an IPv4 attack. We can do a denial of service attack. And again, we can also do some DNS hijacking here. But, you know, as the old saying goes, that's a story for another day. Okay, so you can see that I've now ripped all of this information off. So let's see what we can do. So let's analyze all of this stuff, and let's see what we've discovered. Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, as you can see, I'm going to just expand this out. So we've got the metadata, and you can see I can, oh, that's interesting. It hasn't found any users today. Okay, right, maybe I need to do some more. I've actually, let me just, that's interesting. Maybe it hasn't found any yet, but normally it comes up with a whole bunch of usernames. And I'm going to extract all the metadata. There we go. That's more like it. There we are. Okay. So you can now see I've got 119 documents, and we can have a look at those. And if you look at some of these, okay, for example, customer services, accounts, department. Look at this, though. I've got a complete list of usernames, names, physical names. I've got folders, but check this out. It actually shows me the C drive of the documents where they're stored. More importantly, I've got 3 printers, actual physical IP addresses of the printers here as well. More than this, and check this out, this is their software. Come on. Okay. Okay, they deserve to be hacked, baby. They deserve to be hacked. Okay, so emails, of course, if I kept going, it would pull out email addresses. And then, of course, operating systems. Oh, please no, please no. Okay, so, you know, they're screaming to be hacked here. Okay, so as I say, we've got the metadata as well. Now, the other thing that we can also do, again, you can see it's also found 2 servers. So we've now got servers, and yeah, so we've got, that's their actual server that we've got. We've got an IP address for their server. I could look through their domains and any related domains, and also I could now start investigating the various roles on their servers, and I could now start looking for vulnerabilities and any potential weaknesses. So we've actually found there's a weakness here, and also, yeah, and juicy files, my particular favorite. So you see what I mean? A very, very simple attack. A 10-year-old could do this attack, okay? So the problem is that I can access those files. So the problem is I can go in, I can download those files, I can see that information. So that is the problem. That's the conundrum where we are. So how can we defend against that? So by moving to the cloud, are there mechanisms that I can use to defend against that, Andy? Okay. So let's talk then. Andy's top tips to defend against these dark side attacks. Number 10, you can manage your stuff through the Azure Security Center and also through Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. And the reason I say this, of course, is I'm looking at this from an end user perspective, remember, all right? So I'm not looking at this from an admin perspective. So the other day when I demoed this, somebody said, Andy, why are you not showing privileged identity management? And the reason I don't show privileged identity management is because that's for administrators. Wouldn't affect an end user. It wouldn't directly affect an end user. So I'm going to go into my security center here. And I'm just going to flip over here. So this is the Azure Security Center. And as you can see, it's showing me that I've got a potential warning here. I've got some green lights. It's saying, you might want to do something about this. So what I can do is I can then say, okay, I'm going to go to my, I want to create a security policy. So I'm just going to flip over to my subscription. And you can see it talks about data collection on this subscription. So this would basically affect all your VMs or anything that you've got within that particular subscription. I could create another workspace here, but I'll just keep everything as it is. And this is what's really useful. So any remote desktop machines, any end user machines, any servers, you can actually control things like, am I going to, for example, require encrypted hard disks? Am I going to require endpoint protection? Just-in-time network access, that's a new feature, of course. So all of these things you can enable, and essentially on the VMs that you're managing, you can essentially ensure that that little agent is running. And the reason for that, it's great because, again, you don't want to forget to do that. You can also set up notifications here as well, as you can see. And so if there are any kind of breaches, any kind of data notifications, that will flag up. Of course, you get a free version, and you also get the paid version here as well. Hey, I'm from Scotland. I like the free, So, okay, we like to save money. Okay, so that's that. Again, so you've got the data collection here, as I mentioned. Just close that down. So other things that we've got, you could, of course, you've got a dashboard of any kind of incidents or any kind of events that take place here. So, if there are any problems. And here it's making a series of recommendations. So, for example, it tells you that you need to install a particular agent or update something. That's really useful. Keeps me notified. And by doing this, by taking this out of your role and automating this, it just makes the whole process easier and less likely that one of those weak machines will basically get violated. So when we talk about security and compliance, of course, I mentioned this thing called GDPR that's coming in. We've got ISO 27001, all of this compliance. And you're probably thinking, wow, Microsoft is bringing out an awful lot of security features lately. Why are they doing this? And the reason being is they have to. They have to bring out this stuff, okay? Because, there's a very lucrative finance market out there. There's a very lucrative healthcare market, very lucrative government market. And of course, these are industries that are really governed quite tightly. So by enforcing these policies, by giving you the control to enforce these policies and controls, it means that you're compliant as well. So if I go into these Office 365 Security Center here, so I'm just flipping over into the Security and Compliance Center, and again, this is an E5 subscription. But you can see you can set up permissions, you can set, for example, group, role-based. I can set up classification, so data classification. I'll come back to this in a second, where you can do labeling. You've also got things like data loss prevention policies, so prevent from being deleted. And again, I'm going to do a demo of that too. You can also set up archiving, retention, and you've got these supervision policies. Of course, threats are really important, and again, I'm going to talk about the threats and all of that in a moment. You've got searching and investigation, so the ability to place content on legal hold and perform e-discovery on it, forensics. Again, detailed reports and so on. One of my favorite things, though, is if you're an industry, let's say you're finance or healthcare, And you say, okay, but how do I know that Azure or Office is compliant to me? So what you can do here is you can set your region settings. So if I set this for North America, and let's say, for example, I'm in, let's say, finance or something, yeah? I can then click on Save, and then when I look at the audited reports, the compliance documents, it gives me the information that's relevant to my business and to my industry. This is awesome, okay? Customers love this stuff, all right? So all of these reports, it tells you exactly how these, how it's compliant, what features of Azure are compliant, and so on. So this is absolutely awesome stuff, okay? And you've got complete access to those. Okay, so as I say, we'll take a closer look at some of these features in a moment. Okay, great. Okay, now another useful feature as well is it's always nice to know what's going on your network. And this is one of my really favorite tools at the moment. It's called ATA. Again, there are sessions here at Ignite. If you get a chance to go and see one of these sessions, or indeed go down onto the show floor and have a look at this product, it's awesome. So simply by dropping a little agent onto your servers or important machines or devices, it allows you to really monitor potential threats. So essentially, it's all cloud linked. It protects your enterprise from multiple types of advanced target effects. So things like reconnaissance. So again, if somebody is jumping onto your network, having a look around, or maybe trying to perform lateral movement. Now, of course, many people, that you'll get great demos. Many security people do great demos, but the problem is, the demo looks great, but then you say, hang on a minute, are you logged on as an administrator? Well, of course, if they've got admin privileges, they can do anything, right? And that's the point. So if you're going to attack, you have to think quietly, yes? A little bit like Tyrion Lannister, If he's trying to get into King's Landing, what is he going to do? He's going to go underneath where it's nice and quiet. Yes? And what you do is you come in either as a guest user, you come in as a regular user, nice and quiet, and you perform lateral movement throughout the organization. So one of the attack at the beginning, getting usernames, is a very, very powerful feature of a potential attack. So lateral movement, so spreading their attack surface, this is what hackers, of course, try to do. But what you're also trying to avoid is persistence. So with persistence, of course, a typical type of attack is an advanced persistent threat. So it's the kind of threat that just doesn't want to go away. So the types of attacks that ATA can help defend against include things like pass the ticket, pass the hash, all of these types of attacks here. Now, this is also good, anomalous logins. So logins, let's say, for example, I log in here in Orlando, and then in 10 minutes' time, there's another login from the UK. Well, that's impossible. That's called impossible travel. You could never do that. So there's something wrong there, and again, ATA would pop up there. But also unknown threats as well. So in the past, of course, a lot of things like firewalls, defenses, it looked at things like known attacks, known patterns. Again, this looks for things that are out of the ordinary. But it also looks at things like password sharing. So, of course, users are terrible sometimes, and they share passwords. Again, admittedly, with biometrics and the likes of Windows Hello, it's becoming harder to do that. But it does prevent this lateral movement. So let's have a look then at ATA. So in this example, you can see that I have a number of potential risks. So you can see it's flagged up that I've got 3 serious risks. So I've got a pass the ticket attack going on here. There is a suspicious identity attack based on abnormal behavior. And you can see that I've got a user called Michael. And we have 6 abnormal logins to various servers on our network. And, that doesn't look quite right. So again, they're trying to remote access into these networks. And again, you can see he's also trying to access, or has successfully accessed, some resources there. So we can see that Michael's account here, he's a senior program manager. You know he's never going to work in this company again. But you can see there's a password issue there. It's not been changed for a while. So what this does is it flags up the user, it's identified the user, and it's also made some recommendations that we either set up things like multi-factor replication. We need to talk with this user. But it also shows you, for example, his contacts and colleagues, and we can then take an informed decision. Again, if we have weaknesses, ATA is a great tool to defend against that. All right. So that was my number 9. Andy, what's your number 8? Great question, sir. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about Office 365 data governance. So data governance, again, is really important. So what is data governance? Okay, so first of all, what data can I import into my cloud? And if once my data is in the cloud, how is that data backed up? How long do I need to keep that data for? So data governance is, again, a really useful feature. So if you need to comply with industry and government regulations, for example, the incoming GDPR that I mentioned, well, some of the things that you can do, you can set up, for example, data retention policies. You might have an archival policy for your organization. Can I just have a quick show of hands? How many of you remember a little product called Exchange 55? How many of you? Oh, see, now I've got respect for you. Okay, there you go. Now I know that there is somebody as old as me in the room. Okay. So, so archiving of data is really, really important. And if you remember those old days of Exchange and those old days of Outlook, then you will shake with terror when I announce these 3 letters, PST files. Do you remember those? Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so PST files, absolute nightmare, personal stores. So now what we can do, of course, is we can use the same principle, and users can still have those, but you can stick them up in Office 365 and in the cloud. Okay, and of course, we're also seeing huge improvements in Azure Active Directory. And I was actually having a conversation with my buddy John Craddock, who's doing a session this afternoon, by the way, on the future of kind of Active Directory. And we kind of see, AD here on premises, don't we? And then over here, we see Azure Active Directory here. And what do we have in the middle? We have Azure AD Connect. We have Active Directory Federation services, and now, of course, we've now got PTA, pass-through authentication, and desktop single sign-on. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, anybody remember? Well, I mentioned Exchange 5.5. So in Exchange 5.5, there was a little file called dir.edb. Do you remember that? So the dir.edb was the external connector for Windows NT4, and I'm thinking, are you trying to tell me we've just come full circle? So don't you see it in the future? We are gonna, basically on a Windows server, you're going to add the role, you're going to connect to Azure AD, Azure AD. There's gonna be no domain controller, no global catalogs, nothing. You're just gonna connect to the cloud. Everything will be cached. If you lost power, it will be cached on premises. It's coming, baby, I'm telling you. That's Andy's prediction of 2017, okay? Maybe I had some kind of insight. Who knows? Okay, so the future is pretty good. So let's talk about then this data governance. So again, I'm just gonna flip over into my 365 machine here, and you can see that I'm in the Security Center for Office 365, and I can import data here into the cloud. Andy, can I export data out as well? Of course you can, it's your data. I'm gonna click onto the archive, and you can see I've got a couple of archives done, and I'm gonna enable an archive for myself. So there you go, I've enabled the archive, and now of course, what this means is once this just sets up, okay, I'm just gonna flip over into Outlook. Okay, so you can see that when Outlook comes up, you can see I now have an online archive, yes? So again, ensuring that the data remains within your organization. This directly affects users, okay? So the other thing that you can also do is you can set up data loss retention policies. So I'm just going to call this my Ignite retention policy. Click on Next. Okay, and I can say, how long do I want to store this for? So, for example, if it was a tax record, it might be 7 years, or I'm just going to make it a year here. You can base the content on whether it last changed or whether it's new. Do you want to delete afterwards? You can also put an advanced rule on it as well. So, for example, you can detect any sensitive information. That could be useful. I'll come back to sensitive stuff in a moment, because, of course, that's what we're talking about with FOCA. So choose the locations. What kind of data do we want to protect? Okay, so are we protecting everything, or do you want to do them individually? So you can either do a white or a black list here. So do you want to turn on prevention lock? So prevention lock is essentially placing the content on legal hold. So this essentially allows your users to, you can add and edit and everything comes in, but it just means that you can't delete anything. Very useful, very powerful, especially for meeting with compliance rules. Okay, so that's a really nice setting. So we go ahead, we review our settings, and then, of course, I'm just going to cancel out of that just now. Okay, the final thing here then is supervision. So imagine if you were in a school or some kind of scenario where you had to monitor email. Now, again, I'll just call this Ignite Supervision Policy. Do remember that in some locations in the world, however, this would not be allowed. So I'm going to monitor let's say a group here called my sales team. And I could exclude a particular user if I wanted to. Do I want to monitor incoming and outgoing or just internal communications? I could set up a condition if I want to. In fact, let's go back to that. I could say, okay, this condition, I'm going to say, this is where you can put in a rule. So I could specify a supervisor. So in the condition, I could say, whether it contains these words, if it comes from a specific organization. For example, here in the US, you might want anything coming from the IRS, for example. Specify the amount that you want to store. Choose the reviewers, so who's going to review this? So I'm going to select myself. And again, you just review the settings. So again, this is a really useful kind of feature. We used to call this, I suppose this is kind of like, almost like journaling in kind of old versions of Exchange. Okay. Now, of course, we can't talk about security without talking about cryptography. And a lot of people say, Andy, I like the idea that Microsoft used BitLocker and so on, but what other solutions are out there? So if you go into the Security Center today, you'll see a whole page of third-party solutions. So the question is, do I have to go with and use a Microsoft solution? No, of course not. There are many, many partners here that you could use. And then, of course, I'm from Scotland. I like free stuff, okay? So the question is, Andy, are there any free solutions? Well, one that I would highly recommend is this one. This is called Cryptonator. I don't know if you've seen this. This is awesome. Absolutely rocks. It's a free tool. So the idea is that your users, let's say you use OneDrive for Business, you could basically encrypt your document, and then when it syncs into the cloud, it's already encrypted. And therefore, it gets secondary encryption with Microsoft. So again, this is a fantastic tool. It's open source, very, very good, okay? On top of that, of course, you also get a free backup at the NSA, okay? So, that's another story, of course. I always wondered, actually, if you could just call up the NSA and say, you know, I deleted a file a few weeks ago. You couldn't help me out, could you? I always wonder if they would say, yeah, no problem. Okay, so that is that. Cryptonator, definitely take a look at that. It's an awesome tool. And again, what we're talking about here is we're talking about that end user. Think back to that attack at the beginning, yes, with, excuse the language, Fokker at the beginning. Think about what I could get hold of, and what I'm doing with each of these tips and tricks is I'm trying to thwart that attack, okay? So this would definitely help do that, okay? Now, the only thing, of course, that cryptography doesn't defend against is what? What's the only thing that it doesn't defend against? Deletion, yes. So there's nothing to stop a document being deleted. So for example, if I had an encrypted laptop here, which I do, by the way, and I lost my laptop, then at least I know that my data is safe and secure. It's not gone, it's there. Or I backed it up, hopefully. Whereas I can just go and buy another laptop here. Okay, so we're coming down to Andy's number 6. Okay, so number 6. So when we talk about, one of my favorites, of course, is data loss prevention. So I actually prefer the term data leakage prevention. So you saw it in the Google hack at the beginning, where I could just, search for anything, spreadsheets, personal information. Think about it, guys. That kind of information should never be exposed. It's insane that I can go in and I can find personally identifiable information. And also, under compliance rules, you could be actually breaking the law by allowing that kind of data to go up there. And you could be the administrator, and it's your users that's putting that stuff out. Okay? Therefore, you're breaking compliance rules. Therefore, if you were in Europe, you could end up with an enormous bill. And you can't then stand forward and go, hey, well, I didn't know it was my user. You can't do that. So when we talk about number 6, data loss prevention prevents data leakage. And what do I mean by this? Well, data loss is essentially an error condition. So, when we think about Equifax, that's potentially criminal, letting data leak out like that or be hacked like that. So it's an error condition, information systems, which information is destroyed by failure or neglect in storage, transmission, or processing. Information systems implement backup disaster recovery equipment and processes to prevent data loss or restore lost data. So, you could argue that certain airlines, for example, that was negligent. And I don't know if you read the story about that one particular airline that I won't mention. It went down worldwide. I might have shown a slide of it earlier. But the thing about that airline that went down, it was reported that, somebody had just hit a button in the data center. What? That is the biggest pile of tosh that I have ever heard in my life. How can one guy hit a button and take down the entire British Airways? That was a major cyber attack. You could see it. So that's data loss. So it's an error condition. Now, data leakage, on the other hand, is essentially the unauthorized transfer of classified information from a computer to a data center in the outside world. Data leakage can be accomplished by simply mentally remembering what is seen off physical removal, tapes, disks, the thing is, if I go and put files, if I give you a thumb drive with files and send that file out with you, I have no control over that data. I have no idea where that data has gone, okay? And so I've lost control. So whereas you've got the likes of OneDrive for Business, we call it modern attachments. So a modern attachment, of course, is where I don't send you the file, but I send you the link for the file, yes? So you get the link for the file. I can see who's got the file. I can even put a a time restriction on that file. So I can say, hey, I'm going to give you this file, but you can only have it for 30 days. And then I can take it back. More than that, though, you can also classify it, and you can also you can do information protection, things like rights management, which is coming up. So when we talk about data loss prevention, excuse me, let's just have a quick look at this then. So I'm going to go back into my Security and Admin Center. I'm going to go into here, and with data loss prevention, just click on the drop-down arrow. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up, I can do policies, app permissions, and of course you've got device management, which the links into Intune, for example, for protecting your device. So I'm going to click into my policy, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new policy here. And this new policy, just give it a second, I'm going to call it, give it a moment. So, first of all, what kind of retention policy do you want to use? What kind of data? So is it financial? Is it medical and health? Is it privacy? Or is it a custom policy that you want to configure here? So, for example, if I click on to, let's say, financial, I could, and you can see that you've got a number of templates here for different countries around the world. Andy, can I add to these? Of course you can. Of course you can. So I'm going to come down to the US, and you can see that we've got US government potentially sensitive information here. So things like credit card numbers, security numbers, and social security, and so on. So I'm just going to accept the name. Do I want to manage it in all locations or specific applications? So I'm choosing all locations. Do I want to detect when the document is shared? Absolutely. So you might want to say, okay, this is for internal use only. I can then say, okay, give the policy a tip. So I let the users know that I'm using it, and I could specify how many occurrences that this policy is allowed to run. So again, I'm just going to make that one. Do I want to restrict access? So for example, if I restrict access when the user tries to open a document and it's got credit card information, I'm sorry, it's not going anywhere. I'm sorry. Okay, so then I can say only people inside or outside your organization can view this document, or everyone who has been shared with. Again, you can then say let people who have the policy override it. So for example, you might then say, hey, okay, I am sending an email with a credit card, but they've got to provide justification for that. So once I've done that, I say, yes, do you want to turn it on, or do you want to come back and think about it later? This, I got to tell you, is an awesome piece of technology. And it really it detects things like credit card information, sensitive information, PII, personally identifiable information. So that Google hack at the beginning, that's the kind of thing that your users would basically go, I'm going to send that out. You know, so maybe they're not well educated, they don't understand, but when they try to send that document out, a little bar comes up and says, I'm sorry, this document contains sensitive information. By sending this, you're breaking corporate policy. Very powerful feature, guys. Okay? So now we move to my number 5. So we're halfway through Andy's number 5, and this is identity protection. So I'm sure I love identity. I'm passionate about identity management and Azure AD Connect. And at the moment, the whole industry is going through a major revolution. So again, my buddy John Craddock has his session this afternoon. Definitely go along and see that. It's awesome. But identity is full of challenges. So again, passwords, Andy, I've got a username and password. The problem with a username and password is a username and password, it just identifies you as a user, but it doesn't prove that you are that person. Okay? So anybody can have a username, anybody can have the password. Just because you know those things doesn't necessarily prove that you are that person. So what are some of the things that we can do to improve that security? Well, of course, if you've got Windows 10 devices, you've got Windows Hello. Biometrics. Again, are biometrics 100%? No, of course not. There is nothing that's 100%. But if you use things like multi-factor authentication, 2 or 3 methods, then again, you're going to be a lot better off. So identity, as I say here, is full of challenges, especially in the world of government compliance and legality. So Azure Identity Protection, again, is definitely my number 5. So number 5, essentially, it's a risk-based process. So what it does is you can categorize your users. You can say, okay, I've got a bunch of users here. I've got John. John's a member of the sales team. Maybe he lives in a really dodgy area of Orlando, and you're a little concerned about his credentials and how he logs on. So what you can do is you can say, I'm going to basically put him into a slightly different group that requires, so whenever he logs on, he's required to go through this process. The other thing that you can also do is it detects, it looks and remediates any kind of potential dodgy configurations, any unusual user behavior as well. But it also gives you insights into the user. So for example, when the user logs on, it tells me when the user logged on, the date, the time. It tells me the location that the user logged on. It also tells me any alerts. So I mentioned earlier, if the user is carrying out impossible travel, for example, hang on, he's in Japan. How can he be in Japan if he just logged on here 5 minutes ago? That's impossible. It detects any kind of any issues, and you've got really detailed logs. And from those logs, you then get lots and lots of analysis on that users. So the point is it flags up right away. So again, going back to my Fokker attack at the beginning, my users, I could have a list of users there. So right away, first of all, we've got documents that were pushed out onto the web with sensitive information that should have never been there, and I've now got a list of usernames. This would thwart that. You see that? This would definitely fix that potential issue. So, as I said, provide admins with detailed reports, looks for users with potentially leaked credentials, and it monitors irregular activity, and that's the key thing. So, logins at unusual times, unusual locations. Also things like monitor sign-ins with IP addresses. So, why they keep trying to log in from a specific IP address. And that's one thing that you can do, which is nice. You can kind of block certain IP address ranges as well. One thing I would mention is it does require Azure AD Premium for this, by the way. So I am just going to come out of my presentation, and I'm just going to flip over into this little demo here. So here we are. Yes. Okay, so with identity protection, I'm just going to, here's one I made earlier. So I'm in the Azure Identity Protection window. And again, it says, okay, which users have been flagged for risk? Do I have any risk events? I've not created any at the moment. And what vulnerabilities are in place, okay? So again, it shows me if there are any kind of, there's 34 medium, so I've got maybe users that have been set up, for example, without multi-factor authentication. So what I can do is I can then come down here and say, okay, do you want to go ahead and create what we call a user risk policy? And I can specify, is this policy, is it going to affect all users, or is it just going to affect specific users and groups? And when you select the users and groups, I can either include you can say, I want to include a specific group and then exclude individuals if I want to. So again, I'm going to select, for example, let's just bring in Bob and Basil. I'll bring in all the Bs, okay? I will bring in myself as well. And I'll just click on select, and then I'll be done. So based on those users, I'm going to, let's say, select some options. So do I want to set a particular risk level for these users? So are they low, are they medium, or are they high risk? Well, I could say these are medium risk users, and I'm going to select them. And again, done. So based on the user, based on the condition, what controls do you want to put in place for this? So again, by the way, I don't have it here, but if you had Windows Hello and you had Windows devices, you could enforce things like Windows Hello. Do I want to block access for these users, or do I want to allow access but require a password change? So if we detected that the user was coming in from an unusual location or was performing something that doesn't quite look right, for example, Michael in the ATA demo earlier, you could then require MFA registration. And with MFA registration, basically when the user next logs in, it comes up and it says, okay, your administrator has required that you get multi-factor authentication. You have X number of days to actually go ahead and do this. And again, if he doesn't do it within the X number of days, he'll then get locked out on the 14th day if he's not registered. Or you could then say he requires multi-factor authentication. So immediately, the next time the user logs in, it's sent to him, and he must actually go ahead and log in. So that's, again, that's useful. Again, for this purpose of this, in fact, yeah, I'll click on that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select that. So then we've got a review, so it shows me the users that are impacted, and again, I can go now and I can enforce that policy there. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to click on Save there. Alrighty. So the next thing, you also have what we call a sign-in risk policy. So a sign-in policy, again, you can you can set users, you can set the similar conditions. Again, you can select an access control method and very almost identical to the user policy. So again, you can set it either by user or what's the risk, the sign-in risk by that user. So for example, you might have a sign-in risk policy for administrators, that administrators are required to have multi-factor authentication. Okay. Again, very, very nice feature. One other little, just small little thing while we're actually here, if I go back into the Security and Compliance Center here, I showed you the service assurance. I don't know if you noticed this on the dashboard here. This is called Secure Score. This is just a quick afterthought here, but this is quite useful. So if I go into Secure Score, in fact, just go in there. Again, this is, if you've got Office 365, this is all included for you. But if you ever, if you ever think, okay, I've got Office 365, I've got this stuff, but what's the best type of security to have, Andy? How do I know what kind of security to do? So down here we have this score. And you can see here that at the moment I have a score of 101 of a possible 369. So you can, and the maximum here is 452. So by moving this down, so if I want a score of 101, what do I need to do? If I want a score of, let's say, 226, these are the things that I would need to do. So enable multi-factor authentication for global admins, enable client rules. So it tells you the things that you would need to do. And more than that, it actually tells you and shows you how to go and do it. The other thing that it does, it also informs you of what type of threats you're defending against. So for example, a potential account breach. So again, we go back to that ATA demo earlier and that we spoke about Michael. Remember, this would thwart that type of attack. Okay. Oh, interestingly enough, by the way, I love this statistic. 45, that's the average Office 365 tenant score today. How crazy is that? Okay, so guys, you need to go in here and you need to look at this and you need to get that score up, all right? 45, again, is an abysmal score, I would say. Now, the other thing that you can also do is you can go to your score analyzer, and the one thing that you can do is you can analyze your score with your peers. So what's the industry standard? So if you're finance, if you're healthcare, and so on, how does my score compare with the general overall industry? So that's really useful here. Okay, so I just thought I'd show you that. That's called, as I say, Secure Score. All right. Oops, hey, that's a great book, by the way. Okay. So, moving back to my slide. All right. Oops. Okay. So, tip number 4, deploying multi-factor authentication. So, multi-factor authentication, as I've said, is an absolute must on the network. Problem is, in the past, it was terribly complicated. So, you know, we used to have text messages and phone calls. Kind of reminds me of the day when we used to activate Windows. Remember, we used to have to phone that number and read all those numbers out and so on. So now we don't need to do that, of course. Why? Because we've got biometrics. So when you set up this type of authentication, you can choose the method. You can set up in fact, your users can choose the method that they prefer. Really easy to set up, both in Azure and 365. Just do a search in the search box for multi-factor authentication, and it's available on every SKU. So basically, you switch it on globally, and once it's on, that's it. So once you've switched it on, you can then set to your users, okay, what authentication method am I going to set up for my users here? So, of course, when the user logs in, they can actually choose whether they want to use a text message and so on. I love this. So if you've got an iPhone or a Windows phone or an Android, you can download the Microsoft Authenticator today. And again, if you're an administrator, when you log into your portal, it will ask you for multi-factor authentication. You just put your fingerprint on the phone, boom, it's easy. Users, you don't need a degree, you don't need any kind of complex interaction, it's simple. And that's the key to security, guys. Make security simple and easy to use. All right. So the authenticate, and again, if you've got the watch, you can put your fingerprint on the watch if it's got a sensor as well. Andy, can I set this up through group policy? Great question. Thank you. Yes, you can, of course. Again, what I've done here, these slides are available for download. Again, I'll just go through these. These are just the step-by-step guide on how to do it. Now, if you have ADFS. So if you've got an ADFS server, I often get asked this question: can I use multi-factor authentication with Active Directory Federation services? Absolutely you can. So again, if you're using PTA as well, you can. So basically this just loads on top. Stick this on top of your ADFS server. It's a free download. This is the multi-factor authentication server. You can get it today. And essentially, easy to set up, but even easier to manage your multi-factor authentication for your users. Okay, so download that today. Number 3 is SharePoint and OneDrive. So the problem, of course, it's all about following your data. So again, this is why this is really important to me. So when users just send data out, or let's say on a thumb drive, it's really difficult to follow. But when you use, for example, modern sharing, modern links, it's almost like a lasso. You can hold on to that to that particular file. So when we share files, and again, these are just the tips I'm going through here. I'm actually going to walk it through with you just now. This is the kind of step-by-step on how to do it. Particularly important, by the way, if any of you happen to be doing the Office 365 exams, definitely take a look at that. External sharing is always the gotcha, though. So with external sharing, of course, you can share, of course, SharePoint and OneDrive for Business with up to 500 external users, which sounds awesome, okay? Now, the thing is, do you want to make those users anonymous users, or do you want to have the users sign in? So you can actually enforce a sign-in process for your users. And the user basically just signs in. Doesn't have to be an Office 365 account. They can just sign in with a Microsoft account as well. But this is a really good table, by the way, because it shows you who you can share content with in OneDrive and OneDrive for Business and 365. So from sharing here, you can see I'm sharing out a document. I can then say, okay, who do I want to share this document with? So do I want to send it out to everybody? So this could be customers, it could be contacts within your company. If it's an external customer, they'll get an email that looks something like this, and once they accept it, they can obviously either log in with a Microsoft account or a 365 account. So let's just have a very quick mention, by the way. It's amazing how many people come on my courses. I do an Office 365 masterclass. How many people come on my courses and they're not 100% on sharing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the SharePoint Admin Center here, and I'm going to show you just a couple of really important things. So in my SharePoint Admin Center, I'm going to select, let's say I'll just select a site here. And in the site, I'm going to click on the Sharing tab. So in the Sharing tab here, you can see this is the key thing. How do you want to share this document outside your company? And the one that I would like to flag up here is allow external users who accept the sharing invitations. Awesome. You know who they are, you can audit them, you can see who's logging in and who's getting access. Allow sharing with all external users, including anonymous links. The downside of that is if you allow that, they can then share your document with other users. So in other words, you've lost control, okay? And that's the worst thing here. So that's how you can do it on a per site basis. If you want to set up the default settings, you can do that in the sharing, in the tenant admin center here. So again, I could set up the default settings here, and you can then specify who's allowed to share it outside your organization. So you can see let only users in selected security groups share this. You can specify the default link for sharing. Things like additional settings, notifications, and so on. So definitely take a look at this. It's an incredibly powerful feature. Just one other thing, a lot of people might mention OneDrive, of course. So we have the OneDrive Admin Center, but even when I click on the Sharing Center, OneDrive for Business is SharePoint. It's the same thing. So you can see you've got those same settings that I just showed you. You can control it for both SharePoint and OneDrive here. And again, almost identical settings for things like the anonymous access. Definitely take a look at those. By the way, if any of you are doing the Office 365 347 exam, there are at least 3 or 4 questions in this area. So just be familiar with that. All right. Okay, so going to flip back. And let's just, so that's my number 2. So again, we're talking about that Fokker attack at the beginning, those documents that were out there. What's my number 2 to restrict that? So information protection, it will definitely restrict your content. So you've got things like classification, you've got file encryption, we've got rights management, and of course, you've got detailed auditing. So essentially, rights management in the past, you can just activate this. It's on by default now. There we go. So what does it do? The key thing here is it prevents permissions bleed, okay? So, and again, you want to defend against anybody potentially plagiarizing your content. So if I just flip over into my little demo here, I'm just going to quickly show you a policy. And this is how information protection links in with the likes of rights management. So again, you've got your labels, your classification labels, and you can, of course, customize these labels. You can have a global policy. And you can say, okay, is this label going to protect, i.e., if it's going to protect, is it protecting with Azure Rights Management, or you can even use a third-party solution as well, yes? So I've got there's two solutions here that you can use, okay? If you protect it, you can say it's internal, and you can set your confidential. In other words, if I send you this document, you can't cut, copy, paste, you can't forward it, you can't print it, for example. You can set the labels up, you can set watermarks up on the document. So again, and you can even put in conditions as well. So this is what, you can set up things like credit card numbers if it detects credit card numbers. So information protection kind of combines all of these things that I've showed you. Okay, really, really powerful feature. Okay. So again, you make some recommendations, and then let's just come over here, and I'm just going to kind of discard those changes there. Okay, and just move over there. Okay, so as I said, rights management has been linked in with data loss prevention in this case, and also information protection. And you can set this up either as a global policy, or you can actually set this up as scoped policies on particular groups of users as well. So if you've got different branches or different types of users. Okay, so very powerful feature. Rights management is linked into information rights management services. Fantastic. So Andy, if that's your number two, what's your number one? My number one is really simple. Don't rely purely on technology. Jeffrey Snover said yesterday, don't rely on technology. It's all about people in security, and you need to get that right. So in the IT, obviously we've got our infrastructure, but have good security policies, have good procedures, have good training, and have a good, solid awareness. All of this will equal success. And then our Fokker attack at the beginning has now been thwarted. Okay, so there we go. That's my trends. That's my dark side. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about covert channels in modern computing. Very cool stuff. Same time tomorrow in West 311 here. So they're my other sessions here. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. And do follow me on Twitter. I'll take questions afterwards because I've just ran over my time. But thank you so much, and enjoy Ignite. Thank you.